There is a question that lives in the quiet spaces of your mind, one you rarely ask aloud, but feel in every interaction that leaves you diminished. Why does the dismissal always seem to find you? Why do conversations flow around you as if you were a stone in a stream, present but irrelevant? Why do people reach for you only when they need something, then vanish once you have given everything you had to offer? You watch others command attention without effort. You see them set boundaries that others respect without question. You notice how they occupy space in rooms, in relationships, in their own lives, while you seem to apologize for your very existence. And you wonder if there is something fundamentally wrong with you, some invisible mark that tells the world you can be overlooked, interrupted. The truth is more uncomfortable than a simple flaw in your character. The truth is that nothing in your relational world happens to you randomly. Every slight, every moment of being talked over or forgotten, every relationship where you became a convenience rather than a priority, these are not accidents of fate or evidence of a cruel universe. They are echoes. They are reflections of something you have been doing to yourself for so long that you no longer recognize it as a choice. Your external reality is not separate from your internal landscape. It is an exact portrait of it. The people who walk past you without seeing, who take from you without gratitude, who expect your flexibility while offering none of their own, they are simply responding to the signal you broadcast. And that signal says, in a language deeper than words, that you do not consider yourself worthy of consideration. This is not blame. This is a reckoning. When you remain quiet in the face of treatment that hollows you out, when you accept roles in relationships that make you feel small, when you apologize for having needs or asking for basic decency, you are teaching the world how to perceive you. You are handing over a script and asking others to read it, then wondering why they follow it so faithfully. The outer chaos you experience is actually the inner chaos made visible. Jung understood this with a clarity that most people spend lifetimes avoiding. He knew that we do not live in a neutral world that randomly assigns us good or bad treatment. We live in a world that mirrors back the relationship we have with the hidden parts of ourselves. If you do not value your own voice, the world will not strain to hear it. If you do not protect your own boundaries, no one else will feel compelled to honor them. Look back at the patterns. Notice how the same feeling follows you through different cities, different jobs, different people. The faces change, but the story remains identical. You are dismissed, diminished, drained, and each time you tell yourself it is the circumstance, the particular person, the bad timing. But the constant in every equation is you, not because you are defective, but because you are carrying a belief system that was installed long before you had words to question it. Somewhere in your early years, you learned a terrible lesson. You learned that love was conditional, that acceptance required erasure, that being good meant being quiet. Perhaps you were the child who noticed that speaking up brought punishment, that having needs created burden, that showing anger meant losing affection. So you adapted. You became the easy one, the understanding one, the one who could be counted on to bend without breaking. These adaptations made sense once. They were survival strategies in an environment where you had no power. But you are no longer that child. You are carrying their strategies into a world where you do have choices, where you could speak and leave and refuse. Yet the old programming runs on, directing your behavior from beneath your awareness, making you act as though your survival still depends on making yourself smaller. You have internalized a hierarchy where everyone else matters more than you do, where their comfort is essential and yours is optional, where their time is valuable and yours is expendable. This is not modesty or kindness. This is self-abandonment dressed in the costume of virtue. And it sends a clear message to everyone around you. The mechanism is invisible but precise. When you habitually say yes, while everything in you screams no, when you let comments that wound you pass without response, when you give endlessly to people who never think to ask what you might need, you are confirming your position in an unspoken hierarchy. You are agreeing to be less. And people believe what you show them about yourself far more than what you tell them. Jung warned that what remains unconscious will dictate your life, and you will mistake that dictation for destiny. You will think it is just how things are, just how people are, just your luck. You will change everything external, while the internal pattern remains untouched, and you will watch in confusion as the same experiences manifest in new forms. Different relationship, same feeling of invisibility. Different workplace, same sense of being exploited. Different friends, same discovery that you matter to them only when convenient. The path forward requires something most people resist with every fiber of their being. It requires you to stop seeking respect where you will never find it. It requires you to cease the desperate hunt for validation from people who have shown you repeatedly that they do not see you. It requires you to turn your attention inward and begin the difficult work of rebuilding what you have allowed to crumble, the foundation of how you see yourself. Because respect is not a gift others bestow when you finally prove yourself worthy enough. Respect is a resonance. It is what happens when you hold yourself with such regard that attempting to diminish you feels impossible, not because you are aggressive or defended, but because you are solid. You are present in yourself. You know your worth not as a concept, but as a lived reality, and that knowing changes everything about how you move through the world. You have spent years attempting to demonstrate that you are enough. You became the child who never caused problems, the partner who anticipated every need, the friend who dropped everything whenever someone asked. You contorted yourself into whatever shape seemed most likely to earn approval, believing that if you could just be perfect enough, generous enough, selfless enough, people would finally recognize what you have been trying so hard to prove. But that recognition never came, not in the way you needed. You received occasional praise, fleeting acknowledgement, momentary appreciation. Then the same people who benefited from your constant availability went back to treating you as an afterthought. And you were left with a hollow feeling, a sense that something fundamental was being traded away for scraps that never satisfied. This is the cruelty of living for external validation. You constructed a version of yourself designed to please, a carefully crafted persona that smiles at the right moments and agrees when it should object. Jung called this the mask you wear to navigate the social world. It serves a function, helps you belong, gives you a role to play. But when you forget it is a mask, when you mistake it for your true face, you lose access to the person underneath. The person underneath has needs that the mask denies. The person underneath gets tired and angry and hurt. The person underneath wants to say no and walk away and demand better. But you buried that person so deep, convinced yourself so thoroughly that survival meant constant accommodation, that you can no longer distinguish between who you actually are and who you pretend to be for acceptance. Every time you bend to avoid disappointing someone, every time you swallow your truth to keep the peace, every time you give from a place of depletion, because refusing feels impossible, you drift further from your center. You become a collection of reactions to other people's expectations, rather than a person with autonomous desires and boundaries. And the world senses this. The world always senses when someone has vacated themselves. Those who respect themselves do not perform worthiness. They do not compile evidence of their value through endless service. They do not treat every interaction as an audition where they might finally earn a permanent place in someone's regard. They simply exist with a quiet certainty about who they are. And that certainty makes manipulation difficult and exploitation obvious. You, however, have made yourself available for both. You have signaled through 1,000 small surrenders that you can be convinced to abandon yourself, that your boundaries are negotiable, that your discomfort matters less than someone else's convenience. And so people have learned to rely on this, to expect it, to feel entitled to treatment you would never accept if you remembered you had a choice. The shift begins with a single syllable, one you have been taught to fear. No, not the apologetic no that comes wrapped in justifications and qualifications. Not the guilty no that tries to soften the blow with excessive explanation. The clear, final, non-negotiable no that requires no defense because it comes from a place of self-regard rather than self-doubt. When you say no without apology, you announce something essential. You announce that there are limits to what you will tolerate, that your energy is not an infinite resource for others to drain, that your time belongs first to you. This announcement will feel dangerous. It will trigger every fear about being rejected, abandoned, seen as difficult or selfish. Because the old program in your mind still believes that accommodation is the price of love. But watch what happens when you hold firm anyway. Watch how certain people respond with anger or hurt or manipulation, trying to guilt you back into the familiar position of giver while they remain taker. And watch how this reveals exactly what they valued about you. Not your humanity, not your authentic self, but your usefulness. Your willingness to deplete yourself for their benefit. These reactions will hurt. They will make you question whether you were wrong to assert yourself. The guilt will rise like a tide, telling you that you are being cruel, that you should be more understanding, that good people do not disappoint others this way. This guilt is not your moral compass. It is the voice of conditioning, the internalized demand that you remain small and available and grateful for whatever crumbs of affection come your way. Underneath the guilt lives something you have been avoiding for years, your shadow. All the parts of yourself you learned were unacceptable and buried so deeply you forgot they existed. The anger you were told was ugly. The firmness you were punished for showing. The desire to protect yourself that was labeled as selfishness. These qualities did not disappear when you repressed them. They simply went underground, where they continued to influence your life in ways you could not see. The child who was shamed for saying no learned to smile while being harmed. The child who was ignored when they set boundaries learned that safety required invisibility. The child who was only valued for compliance learned that their worth was transactional, something earned through service rather than inherent in their being. And these lessons became the foundation of every relationship you have built since. You moved into adulthood carrying this programming, convinced that strength was dangerous and assertion was selfish. So you rejected these qualities in yourself, tried to become their opposite. You became agreeable where you longed to be firm. You became silent where you needed to speak. You became accommodating where you should have been immovable. And in doing so, you handed away the very qualities that would have protected you. Now you sit in relationships where you feel used, and you wonder why you cannot leave. You endure workplaces that exploit you, and you cannot understand your own paralysis. You watch yourself accept treatment that makes you feel worthless, and you are baffled by your inability to defend yourself. But this is not weakness. This is the shadow at work, the buried parts of you that whisper you do not deserve better, that speaking up will cost you everything, that being strong will make you unlovable. Consider the moments when you most needed to assert yourself, but remained frozen. The time you completed work for someone who took credit without acknowledgement, and you said nothing because confrontation felt impossible. The relationship where you gave everything while receiving barely anything, yet you stayed because leaving felt like admitting failure. The friend who only called when they needed something, and you answered every time because refusing felt like becoming the bad person in the story. These moments are not random failures of courage. They are the precise points where your shadow controls you, where the repressed parts of your psyche direct your behavior without your conscious awareness. Your anger at being used cannot surface because you learned anger meant abandonment. Your firmness cannot emerge because you were taught that boundaries made you difficult. Your voice cannot rise because you internalized that speaking your truth was dangerous. Jung understood that what you refuse to acknowledge in yourself will govern you from the darkness. Your denied anger becomes a passivity that lets others walk over you. Your rejected strength becomes a fragility that makes you easy to manipulate. Your silenced voice becomes an anxiety that eats at you from within, a constant pressure of everything you are not saying, everything you are swallowing to maintain a peace that was never real. The work ahead is not theoretical. It is not about understanding yourself better or gaining insight into your patterns. It is about concrete action, repeated until the old programming loses its grip and a new way of being takes root. You cannot think your way into self-respect. You must build it through daily practice, through choices that feel uncomfortable at first, but become the foundation of how you exist in the world. Begin by treating your discomfort as information rather than something to be managed or suppressed. When something bothers you, when someone crosses a line or makes a request that drains you, pause before you automatically accommodate. Ask yourself a single question. If I genuinely valued myself, what would I do right now? The answer will often be simple and terrifying. You would leave the conversation. You would decline the request. You would name the behavior that hurt you. Follow that answer even though every instinct screams to stay safe through compliance. Your body knows when you are betraying yourself. It knows in the tightness in your chest when you agree to something that depletes you. It knows in the nausea that rises when you stay silent about treatment that diminishes you. It knows in the exhaustion that has no physical cause but comes from living a life where you are constantly abandoned by the one person who should never abandon you. Listen to these signals. They are your warning system, alerting you that you are about to sacrifice yourself again. Stop explaining yourself into the ground. When you say no, let it stand alone without 3 paragraphs of justification. When you set a boundary, do not apologize for having one. When you make a choice that honors your needs, resist the urge to convince everyone why it was necessary. Over-explanation communicates doubt. It tells people you are uncertain about your right to refuse, that you feel guilty for having limits, that you can be argued out of your decision if they push hard enough. Practice saying phrases that feel stark and insufficient. I cannot do that. This does not work for me. I am not available. No additional words. No softening. No cushioning the blow for someone who should not have asked in the first place. Those who respect boundaries will accept them without demanding your reasons. Those who challenge them were already planning to ignore them. Look at how you organize your time. Where do you appear in your own schedule? If you examine your week and find that every hour is allocated to work, obligations, other people's needs, and nothing remains for you, that is a diagnostic finding. It reveals that you have accepted your own irrelevance in your life. Block time for yourself as if it were a meeting with someone important, because it is. You are meeting yourself. You are acknowledging that your rest, your interests, your internal world deserve the same protection you extend everything else. When disrespect arrives, resist the temptation to react immediately from emotion. Explosive anger or silent withdrawal both keep you trapped in old patterns. Instead, create space between stimulus and response. Breathe. Feel the reaction moving through you without immediately acting on it. Then speak from a place of clarity rather than woundedness. State what is true. I do not accept being spoken to this way. That comment was inappropriate. This behavior is not acceptable to me. You are not asking permission. You are informing. Notice who surrounds you. Evaluate whether your relationships nourish you or merely consume you. Are the people in your life present for who you are? Or are they present for what you provide? Do they celebrate you? Or do they only appear when they need something? This assessment is not cruelty. This is discernment. You have a limited amount of energy in this life, and giving it to people who do not value it is a form of self-harm disguised as loyalty. Begin creating distance from those who have made a habit of your depletion. You do not need a dramatic confrontation or a formal ending. Simply become less available. Respond more slowly. Decline invitations without elaborate excuses. Pull your energy back and redirect it toward yourself, and toward relationships that operate on reciprocity rather than extraction. Some people will notice and ask what changed. Some will not notice at all, which tells you everything you needed to know about how much you actually mattered. These practices will feel unnatural at first because you are working against years of conditioning. You are retraining yourself to see your own needs as legitimate rather than shameful. You are learning that disappointing others is sometimes necessary to avoid disappointing yourself. You are discovering that respect is not earned through perfect service, but commanded through consistent self-regard. But even as you begin this work, one final fear will attempt to pull you back. The fear that if you stop accommodating, if you stop making yourself endlessly available, if you stop being whatever others need you to be, you will end up alone. This fear is ancient and powerful. It whispers that isolation is the price of authenticity, that you must choose between being yourself and being loved. This is the last chain that keeps you bound to patterns that destroy you. Emotional dependency, the belief that you cannot survive without the approval and presence of others, even when those others treat you poorly. You stay in relationships that hollow you out because empty company feels safer than solitude. You accept friendships that diminish you because being overlooked feels better than being alone. You remain in situations that require you to hide who you are because the alternative seems unbearable. But there is something you have not yet understood. Only when you can bear your own company, only when you are whole enough to exist without constant external validation, can you truly choose who deserves access to you. Everything before that is not connection. It is dependency wearing the mask of relationship. It is fear of abandonment masquerading as love. The moment you stop needing others to confirm your worth is the moment everything shifts. Your energy changes. Your posture changes. The way you occupy space changes. You are no longer negotiating for scraps of attention or auditioning for permanent acceptance. You simply are. And that quality of being, that solidity, creates its own magnetic field. People sense when someone is no longer available for manipulation because they have remembered who they are. Jung said it clearly. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The disrespect you experience, the relationships that wound you, the cycles that repeat endlessly, these are not random occurrences or evidence of a hostile universe. They are the visible manifestation of your hidden beliefs about yourself, your worthiness, your right to take up space in the world. The external changes when the internal reorganizes. You do not need to become hard or defended or closed. You need to stop begging for love through obedience. You need to stop contorting yourself to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. You need to make peace with being alone until you find people and places that honor what you actually are, rather than what you can perform. From this moment forward, you face a choice with every boundary crossed, every limit tested, every moment of dismissal. You can remain silent and confirm the pattern. Or you can speak, act, leave, and begin writing a different story. Not through aggression or retaliation, but through the simple act of treating yourself as someone who matters. When that becomes your baseline, when self-respect is no longer negotiable, the world responds. Not because people suddenly become better, but because you are no longer available to those who refuse to meet you with dignity. Respect begins within. And when it finally takes root there, it becomes impossible for anyone to deny.